possibilities, and is there something that we can do about that? So science is a big one that's weighing on our minds as well.
Are there any more people in the audience that want to weigh in on this? I hope. Who would like to make a comment? Ambassador, or your leader? Scott, thank you for joining us.
Maybe just a bit of a question and invite you for Elizabeth. During the course of this Congress, Secretary Clinton met with the Russian counterpart on the margins of the APEC summit in Russia and concluded a new MOU on cooperation on science and policy in Antarctica and a joint statement on collaboration in Thuringia, linking the U.S. national park to the proposed Russian national park. And I just wonder if anybody might want to elaborate on that in terms of examples of collaboration in both the Arctic and the Antarctic, like two rather important original originators of the Antarctic Treaty and the Antarctic Conference.
At least in terms of Thuringia, I think that does offer a possible model. Unfortunately, as some might be aware, the agreement that was reached, that's only our National Park Service, which addresses land. And so with the cooperation that was just ironed out with Russia, with Thuringia, unfortunately that only addresses the terrestrial side, but not the marine side as well. So it's actually something that I've been making some inquiries back to home in the last few days about to try to see, what more can we do and how can we look at this. So maybe stay tuned, hopefully in the future there'll be some progress. And with respect to Antarctica, I'm not as familiar.
I could just add quickly to that. So the Bering Strait is both the most, according to scientists, the most biologically productive part of the Arctic. And it's also this choke point that Caleb really mapped out for us very clearly. There's an initiative that IUCN is leading along with NRDC and the University of Alaska at Fairbanks to try to take that region, the Thuringia region offshore, and identify, sort of what could be done to help protect the biologically and culturally significant areas offshore in the marine environment. We held a workshop in Nome earlier this year that some people in the room attended, where we brought in different scientists, but also local people who use the area and rely on many of the regions of the Bering Strait for basic subsistence. So we could try to get a handle on what are the key issues and areas that are ahead. We'd like to do the same thing on the Russian side and maybe link them, because the two are so closely related biologically as well as culturally. So that's an area where I think there's some real opportunities to flesh out what has been agreed to already and perhaps extend it into the marine environment between Russia and the United States.
Polina, could you give us some more information on what WWF is doing in Russia on this? Thank you.
I'm Polina Zhbanova from WWF Russia, and I just want to bring some clarification about the National Park Thuringia from the Russian side, because we at WWF Russia prepared the proposal for the Russian government. So the total area of the Thuringia National Park will be 200 square kilometers, and it encompasses marine area 3,300 square kilometers. So the project already got all needed approvals, and it is being reviewed by the government. So we hope that quite soon it will happen. Thank you.
And is that something that you're able to share with everybody here? Is that possible to share the proposal and so forth?
Well, the proposal is not secret, of course, but it is available only in Russian. So if you need, you can give my card and share. So, sure.
Caleb, do you have anything you want to put into this discussion?
I guess the thought that I was having going through this, thinking into ultimate futures projection, and I guess it ties into the future of, or the challenges of funding, but the perception of challenges of funding in Antarctic anyway. And I guess I wonder partially is where funding is going. Is it more towards science research on not just conservation issues versus applied conservation and moving policy issues? But thinking about linkages in the future, one possible doomsday scenario is a bit more that the Arctic becomes, if the public sees a merged view of the poles, if we're successful at communicating and collaborating across, that the Arctic becomes the ocean, the pole of use, and the Antarctic becomes the refuge. And the general, but it's I think to think about the general public perception of where a polar bear is, where a penguin is frequently joked about by experts, but it reflects a reality of the public that people don't know, and it's a very large conventional wisdom out there that we must protect some places and use other places. And so, I think in my presentation I talked about a lot of the more immediate short-term concerns, and then on the policy side there's some more medium-term concerns, but continuing to articulate and project the critical differences in these places, and not that they are two poles and we must save a good portion of one. So one very long-term perspective, I guess.
Any more from the panel? David?
Again, I would just emphasize, it's important to have marine protectors, it's important to have marine biodiversity protection, but there's so many issues that come from outside the region, pollutants, climate change issues. We have not connected very well with international negotiations on climate change. What we're seeing in our eyes, before our eyes, the melting ice, the impacts on the globe, impacts on the Arctic and their communities are really, really severe. And that's not translated into policy action internationally. I think that's where the biggest emphasis has to be given to these kind of global issues and the role of polar regions in those kind of polar processes.
Well, that was something I wanted to mention near the closing. One of the interesting things the Antarctic Treaty System has done in the last 2 or 3 years is that the Scientific Committee on Antarctic Research produced a massively important report on climate change a couple of years ago. And working with the NGOs, they developed a communication strategy to project that document into the hands of the climate negotiators and get a lot more notoriety for it, so to speak. And I'm thinking to myself, and SCAR's in the process now of updating that report. SCAR's going to be done any time soon, I think. And if the Arctic and the Antarctic sides came together and said, let's take the evidence that we're seeing, and this evidence is now growing very fast, accumulating very, very rapidly, take it to the forums where negotiators try to decide our fate about climate change. I think that would be very effective. Anyway, the NGOs have had a big role on that on the Antarctic side, and it's been pretty successful. We could talk more about that later. I want to come back quickly. We had a question from our Chilean colleague, I think, about fishing in the Antarctic. I just wanted to come back to that. I think the question in part was, who gets the money, where did the fish go, and so forth. Well, the companies that are fishing are getting the money. And it's a fairly substantial sum of money, but in the spectrum of values, it's not such a big number. But take the toothfish, for example, the raw sea toothfish. Who eats it? Mainly, under the rubric of Chilean sea bass, it's sold to 4 or 5 rich countries. It's a very expensive delicacy on the plates of people in the U.S., Canada, Britain, Japan, and so forth. And the krill that's caught, as somebody mentioned earlier in the IUCN meeting, is used mainly for feed for aquaculture. So often when you're eating farmed salmon, it's been fed on some form of krill. And then nutraceuticals, that's an exploding market. So when you look at all those omega-3 products and so forth, many of them come from the Antarctic. So that's a partial answer to, it's a complicated equation, but that's the answer to that. Okay, well, if there's no other comments, I want to thank everybody for coming, and thank especially our panel members. And if you have more questions, contact one of us, and we'll be happy to talk further. Thanks very much.
I work with our main campaigner, so we just submitted this. So you're in Francis Parker?
Yeah,
there's a frontier. No, I kind of at Dalhousie University. Yeah, well, I mean, we don't I graduated like a year ago. Yeah, I was talking about through December as of right now. It's been extended.
I worry about the street.
Yeah, they're going to practice and all this. Yes, love it.
She doesn't talk like she's
You might even hear a bit of me coming out of me.
Yeah, like Canadian.
I was there for 7 years, so that'll do it. Okay. Sure.
I like this one. Sit down to negotiate. It's always a sign which is not start negotiating. So anyhow, I think
about striving on the opposite side.
no, I know that.
colleagues, can you all hear me? Am I audible? Yes? A bit of competition in the back, but I'll try my best. In the interest of time, I'd like us to start now because I believe there's a strong chance of somebody else being in this room after us, so we can't assume that we will have that extra time after 2:30. But I'd like to welcome you all and also introduce myself. My name is Robin Yarrow. I come from Fiji in the South Pacific. I'm an IUCN councillor. I'm a member of the Resolutions Committee. And I'm accompanied by Miss Sarah Lucas, who's sitting over there. She's my able assistant on the changes as we go. And I know there have been a number of changes already suggested, and quite a few, in fact. Some have been done online, and some have come through separately. So what we'd like to try and do, and this is consistent with other contact groups, we'll try and start from the beginning and go through and change as we go. But I'm conscious that there are quite a number of them, and it may be best that we try to focus on the operative paragraphs. Would that be agreeable to everyone? If we try and start on the operative paragraphs, because I'm a bit, just a bit worried we may not get through everything in the 90 minutes. And we don't have the luxury of a lot of slots for follow-up contacts, I'm afraid. There's just so many contact groups and so many motions. But I think you've been through contact groups, you know the process. We've got the Pew Charitable Trust here. They're one of the co-sponsors of this merged motion. It's merged, as you know, with the council motion, IUCN Council. And that was done in the spirit of trying to reduce the sheer volume of motions. There's just so many. There's 209 for this council compared to about 140 for Barcelona. Of course, we want to reach consensus if we can. We want to not have to vote. I've chaired a few and we haven't voted at all. But this of course, will always be the challenge. If anyone's unruly, I might have to ask you to leave, but I'm sure that won't happen. But that's in the guidelines given to me. At the end of the meeting, I'll run through what we have agreed to ensure that we're all on the same page. But we have the Pew Charitable Trust here. We have some co-sponsors here. I know the government of Japan is here, and a few other representatives here, UK. Perhaps you could, I know, is it Sue's from the...
We also have the proxy for one of the other co-sponsors.
Okay, so the other, and that's the co-sponsor?
Of the original motion.
Okay. And other co-sponsors that are here, could you identify yourselves or introduce yourselves, please?
Can you show the list of co-sponsors on the end?
So there's eight co-sponsors there. How many are here now? 1, 2 with the proxy?
And NRDC is coming back after they go out for...
And we've got some very interested other people as well, which is good. It's a very important motion, and we do want to get it through, obviously, with the best input that we can. So let's start on the operative paragraphs and work through the operative paragraphs one by one in sequence, so that we then hopefully will get that all done, and then we can go to the preambular. So on that, the first operative paragraph, beginning calls on, states individually, etc. Can I have suggestions that may have already been made, but the protocol or the practice is that we have to do this on this one that was merged. Are there any suggestions on that first 4 lines? Yes, please.
I have a question in reference to the members. It calls on states individually and as members. Members is defined as IUCN members.
So what are you suggesting be added as the word IUCN? I'm not quite clear on what you're suggesting.
Well, I'm just, in reading it, perhaps it could be unclear as members of what. It's an IUCN motion, certainly, but would it be clear if it did state as IUCN members?
If put in the acronym IUCN before members, is that right? Is that what you're seeking?
To clarify members, relieve some ambiguity there, perhaps?
Yes, okay, that can go in, yes. Thank you. Down the back, please.
Hi, Belinda Fager from the...
I wonder whether you could come up a little bit. My hearing is not as good as you younger ones, and if you move forward